One ability that we have included into Stochas is the ability to chain notes, so that if a particular note is played, the following note can be dictated. So you can always say, if note 1 plays, play note A, and if note 2 plays, play note B. I'll show you that in a second how we can set this up, but first have a listen to this little pattern. The first of, I've got a D going chromatically up to the E flat or D sharp, to the E, to the F, and so on. And then up I've got the scale of D major. So let's have a listen. Neither of them are playing the sequence I want. They're all over the place. I want the sequence to play either this lower set of notes or the upper set of notes and play the scale. So it's either chromatically up every semitone or up and follow the scale. So moving on to the chain tab, you'll see nothing's really changed like when you click on the velocity or the shift. It stays on here. But what I can do now is click and drag on a particular note and assign a chain. So as you can see here, I've just created a yellow chain on this note. And if I carry on that sequence up all the way through here, what I'm telling Stochas is when you play this E, play this F sharp next, and then when you play this F sharp, I want you to play this G next, and so forth throughout that chain. But because I haven't set Stochas on this yet, it still will randomly select the next note if it chooses this D sharp. And if it then decides to play this E, it will still randomly select between these two notes. However, if it was to select the F sharp at this point, it would then follow this sequence up. So let me play it and see if you can hear that. Did you hear every now and then it played a couple of the notes from the chromatic scale and then jumped up and then followed the major scale? Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to add the chains on to the lower, onto the chromatic scale, and now it will be either the major scale or the chromatic scale. So let's listen to that. So as you could hear then, it would get to, Stochas would play the D, and then it would get to step 3, and then it would either follow the major scale or the chromatic scale up. So this is a positive set of chains. And to remove any chain that you've put into Stochas, you can simply right click on the note that is receiving the chain, and it will remove any chain that's coming to it. So if you have 3 chains coming to this, be aware you will remove all of these chains. So let me just show you that for an example. So this note here has the 3 chains. If I right click on it, it removes all the chains. Maybe when I'm going through this, I don't want all positive chains. It might be that I want to tell Stochas to not play a particular note if this note is played. And a good example of when to use, or when I use those, is when I've got 3 notes all played sequentially. Now I might want this to be selected in Stochas, but I may never want this note to be followed by this note on step 3. So to do that, hold down Command key on Mac or Control on Windows and drag, and you'll see now you have a red chain. Now this red chain indicates do not follow. So I can add that in, and what it will do now is never play this note if it decides to play this note. However, because I've not got any positive chains set up, it will randomly select between these three, and it will only be told another negative chain to not follow this note again if it plays this one. So if it was to play this F sharp on step 1, it would then choose between this E and D sharp on step 3. However, if it played the D on step 1, it would have the choice of all three. And once again, if it chose the F sharp, it would not play this F sharp again, but it would play this E on step 5. I hope that makes sense. It can get a little bit confusing at times with positive and negative chains, but it's really worth having a play with this and seeing what you can come up with. Now, earlier on in the video and in the video on inputting notes, I mentioned about chained notes, which is a C with the little 2 lines next to it. In chained mode, you can input this kind of note, and the way to do that is to click on the first note that you want to create the chain from, and then to the empty cell where you want the note chained to. And releasing will create the green chained note. Now what this is saying, it's very much like this positive chain that we created here. If you play this note, Stochas, play this note. However, I've probably created that in the wrong spot, so I'll just put that onto here. However, if Stochas plays this note here on step 1, it will never play this step following, because this note can only ever be played if Stochas plays this note. So let me just clear this, and I'll set up an example so you can see how a chained note, a do not follow, and a chained follow will work. In this instance, if Stochas selects this D here on step 1, I want it to play this D again on step 5. And because it's played this and then this, I've told it that I don't want it to play this G. So it will then select between this B here and this D on step 9. If we look at this middle chain here, I've got this B here is not chained to anything. So if Stochas plays this note, it can select any of these 2 notes here, because it can't play this top one, which is chained to the D. So it will either play a B again, or it will play a G. And then if it plays this B, I don't want it to play a B again. So it will then just randomly select between this D and this G. However, if it plays the B and then decides to play the G, once again, I don't have a chain here, so it can choose between any of these 3 notes. Now the final chain is a do follow. If I've got this G here and it plays this G, I want it to not play any of these, so it's going to whiz across and not play any note until step 9, at which point it's going to play this D. So let's have a listen. I'll put it onto half tempo, in fact quarter tempo, so it's nice and slow and you can hear each chain. Okay, I made a bit of a mistake there. Now what I didn't tell Stochas was that on this note, that it is looking at this and thinking, well, I can still randomly select from this note, but you've told me that if you want me to play this note, I have to select this note when I get to these steps. What I need to tell Stochas is to never play this step, so that it will then miss out this note. And I also need it to turn around and say, do not play that note. So now when it plays this G, it will skip these two, and it will only play this D here on step 9. I'll play it a little quicker this time. Okay, I got it right that time. So now you can see how powerful Stochas can be in creating little random phrases, especially if you're creating a little fill at the end of a bar. Now, one thing I do want to show you for really advanced pattern editing, we have a Control Shift or Command Shift depending on Windows or Mac. So I'm dragging with Command and Shift held down because I'm on a Mac to create this chain. When I let go, I then have a more advanced chain details. So what I can tell Stochas is that if it does not play this note, I want it to then play this note. So I can say that if Stochas doesn't choose this G, but randomly selects between these two, I want it to play this G here. So I can do that rather than having to create negative chains and lots of negative chains across, which can look really, really messy and can get very confusing. You'll see that the difference between this chain and these chains is that there is a yellow dot for the indicator that it is if this note plays, then red chain do not follow. However, we've got a red dot here which indicates if this note does not play, then yellow chain follow to this note and play this note. This is really, really good when you start working in drum sequences and creating drum patterns within Stochas. You might want to use things like this for hi-hat controls and for tom fills. So if Stochas doesn't play the kick drum on a particular beat, you can say that we'll start a sequence here that might go into a drum fill. However, if it does play this kick drum, carry on and play the normal drum pattern. Check out one of the other tips and tricks videos in which I do create different drum patterns and drum fills within Stochas. And I'll show you a lot more about how I use my chains to trigger drum fills and to trigger certain patterns using this if not played, then follow this chain.